The first few weeks of the preseason were pretty hectic, but things have finally started to calm down, which means a lot more champions are solidifying their place in the meta. Today is going to be very simple. We're going to be covering 10 top lane picks that are performing the best right now that you need to be abusing in solo queue. Remember that the preseason is the best time for learning and improvement. So if you're looking for a learning tool to help you along the way, then you should check out our website, GameLeap.com. Over at our website, we've got hundreds of guides, all done by challenger players, sorted into a quick and easy to use courses system. We're constantly adding new courses and updating old ones. So if that is something that interests you, then make sure to check us out using the link in the description below. Without further ado, let's get right into those 10 top lane picks. First up is a classic, one of the best go-to top laners for beginners. This is going to be Garen. Garen is really strong at the moment, especially with the new Conqueror, and he has multiple different item paths. This means that he's going to fit really well into pretty much any team comp that you could ever imagine. You have the option of going a very heavy damage build with items like Trinity Force, Phantom Dancer, and even IE into full tank, or you could just go Black Cleaver into full tank. Both of these are going to be really good. You are going to be really tanky no matter what you do on Garen, simply because the amount of true damage in the game was lowered significantly, and he has always had really good amounts of resists from his W. If you're looking for a top laner that's really easy to play and strong at the moment, Garen should be your go-to. But what if your team needs more of an AP bruiser instead of an AD one? Well, then we're going to be looking at our second pick, which is going to be Mord. Mord, just like Garen, is very easy to play. There aren't any complex mechanics in his kit. You just use his abilities when they're off of cooldown, and that's it. Again, Mordekaiser is fantastic with the new Conqueror. He utilizes the healing and the adaptive force so well. He's going to be itemizing things like Liandry's, Rylai's, Spirit Visage, Zonia, so he's going to be very tanky, he's going to heal a lot, he's going to have the dueling potential from his ultimate, and he's going to have invulnerability. This champion is just so well-rounded, which makes him probably the best AP bruiser in the entire game. Next up, we've got one of the champions that abuses Conqueror the best out of any in the game, and that's going to be Yasuo. One of the main reasons why Yasuo is so strong at the moment is because of his insane abuse of Conqueror, but remember that crit itemization also received changes, which was beneficial towards Yasuo because he is able to get his 100% crit a little bit sooner. Personally, I don't think that top lane Yasuo is as good as bot lane Yasuo in higher elo, but in lower elos, top lane Yasuo is definitely where it's at. This champion is just all around fantastic, one of the best melee carries in the entire game. Speaking of melee carries, we've got another one. Next up is going to be Tryndamere. Tryndamere, just like Yasuo, utilizes both Conqueror and Crit. The difference between Tryndamere and Yasuo, however, is that Tryndamere does not need to itemize a Zeal item. He's going to be getting Infinity Edge and Essence Reaver, meaning when he crits, he's going to be hitting very hard. Once you do finish your Essence Reaver on Tryndamere, you just itemize a Stinger, and then either 10% CDR from Lucidity Boots or Transcendence. It's really up to you. This is really strong because it lowers the cooldown on your E to be very low. And when you crit a champion, that cooldown is going to be reduced even further, meaning you can spin with your E, and then auto, and then spin again. This is one of the highest mobility builds out of pretty much any champion, and Tryndamere has the added benefit that he does insane damage and takes towers really quickly. This makes it very frustrating to try and stop Tryndamere from split pushing because he can always just run away or run you down and kill you. Thankfully though, there are quite a few different picks that you can pick into Tryndamere, one of them being Malphite. Malphite is really strong at the moment simply because so much true damage was removed from the game when that was taken off of Conqueror. Black Cleaver also isn't as good as it used to be in previous seasons, and Malphite has gotten buffs, making him one of the best tanks in the game again. One thing is for sure, if you need to soak physical damage, then Malphite is your guy. He also has really good team play, being able to force engages really well with his ultimate on a fairly low cooldown. The thing that makes Malphite better than a lot of other tanks is he operates really well into these attack speed based carries like Tryndamere and Yasuo. With the attack speed debuff on Malphite's E, it's pretty hard for those carries to deal with him and actually kill him. This gives you a team-based tank pick that is still going to be very strong into these champions, which is very rare to see. Malphite isn't only good into Yasuo and Tryndamere though, he's fairly strong into pretty much any AD champion so long as they don't stack Black Cleaver pretty much instantly or have some insane amount of armor shred in their kit. With Malphite, you basically have two different options. Either you can go the more classic full tank route, which will scale a lot better, but you're not going to have nearly as much early power, or you could give yourself a little bit stronger of an early game with a Roa start into full tank. Roa allows you to build a blasting wand early on into the game, which if you're maxing Q, means you're going to be dealing a lot of poke damage in the laning phase. You can pair this with Comet to really turn yourself into a bully in the early lane phase, but I would only recommend this if you are playing against a really squishy target, otherwise it's better just to itemize full tank. Next up, we've got Kludd. Kludd is really strong simply because of how good the new Conqueror is on him. Kludd doesn't really care that much about true damage because he is one of the few champions that does build Black Cleaver as a rush item. The thing that made Kludd really strong right now is he's able to stack that Conqueror really quickly with his W, and once he does have that Conqueror stacked, he's going to have a lot of sustain in a extended fight. This means that if Kludd is dismounted when he has Conqueror fully stacked, he's going to be able to live longer in his dismounted form, which gives him more of a chance to remount, getting his cooldowns back. He's also one of the few bruisers whose build path was not affected at all by the changes that were made during this preseason. He's just going to be going Black Cleaver into Titanic Hydra, Sterix Gauge, GA, and none of these items have changed at all. Our next champion is going to be our resident ranged champion on the list, and also going to be one of Kludd's worst matchups. This champion is going to be Quinn. Now, the reason why Quinn is so successful right now is because of her early dominance on these melee bruisers, but it also has to do with the itemization changes. You see, before, Quinn was used as a counterpick to Renekton because she didn't really have great itemization, she just worked really well against that specific champion. But now that items like Sanguine Blade and Stormrazor are new and changed, these items are going to work really well on Quinn, and she works really well into melee bruisers, making her a really strong pick. The downside to Quinn is she does not work great into tanks like Malphite and Ornn. This is because it's really hard for her to kill those champions in the laning phase, and they're going to be much more useful than her in the late game. She can also struggle against other ranged picks like Ryze and Cassiopeia if you are playing in higher elos where those are common picks. Now, we briefly mentioned Ornn, so I'm just going to cover him next, as he is the other tank on this list. Again, the reduction of true damage in the game was really good for Ornn, and he's one of the few tank champions that is able to output a lot of damage and has really strong team fighting. On top of that, the utility that the special upgraded Ornn items give is insane. These items are worth 1,000 gold each, and each one of his teammates gets one, and Ornn gets 2 of them. This means that late game, Ornn's team is going to be walking around with 6,000 gold worth of stats, at least, for free. Next up, we've got the champion to go to if you are playing into one of these more passive tanky lanes, and this is going to be Nasus. Nasus is so strong into these passive matchups because he's able to freely stack his Q for the first 10 to 15 minutes, which if he is able to do so, he is going to have a lead in the lane. Nasus with stacks is a very terrifying thing, and once he goes back and gets his first item, or just his 40% CDR, suddenly he's going to be dealing a lot of damage and he's going to be farming his stacks so much faster. Nasus is, again, a champion that really didn't care about the true damage, but the increased sustain is terrifying on him. He one-shots squishy carries in the late game and absolutely melts tanks with his E paired with his ultimate. No matter who you're playing, Nasus is a ticking time bomb, and with less ganks being performed top lane right now, Nasus is a great choice. The only thing that is going to be able to shut him down is something with a lot of early game aggression that can prevent him from farming his stacks in the first place. This is going to be something like Renekton or Darius or Riven. Speaking of Darius, he is our last champion on this list. Now the reason why Darius is strong is pretty different from a lot of the other champions that were on this list. You see, Darius can use Conquer, and that is good on him, but he will also use other keystones like Phase Rush and Aftershock. In fact, Darius has one of the best keystone diversities out of pretty much any champion. The reason why Darius is so strong right now are because of his base stats and his early game. Darius is what we like to refer to as a stat check champion. If you don't have good enough base stats, then you will not be able to stand toe-to-toe to Darius in lane. Something like Nasus, who doesn't have great base stats and has a very weak early game, is going to get absolutely obliterated by Darius, and he's not ever going to be able to farm. Darius is really good as a blind pick, but he's also fantastic into champions with really weak early games that you want to completely shut down. He again is one of those champions where the new Conqueror is just so much better for him than the old Conqueror. Pretty much everything about the new Conqueror is better than the old Conqueror for Darius. He gets more AD, which means more true damage on his ult, he gets more sustain in his fights, and he didn't need true damage in the first place because he builds Black Cleaver, which shreds, and his E gives Armor Pen. If you don't know what to pick, Darius is definitely a really good go-to champion because he's going to be good into pretty much everything. Now that does just about do it for 10 top lane picks that are performing really well in this preseason. If you haven't already, then make sure to check out our website, GameLeap.com. Over there we have hundreds of guides, all done by challenger players, and we're constantly adding new and updating old guides. These guides are sorted into a quick and easy to use courses system, and we have courses both on the 5 fundamental roles as well as champion specific courses. By getting your Game Leap membership today, you're going to give yourself the best chances to shoot up the ladder during this preseason. Make sure to check us out using the link in the description below. As always, I'm Panther, I hope you learned something valuable, and I will see you in the next one.